Welcome in to a special episode of Odd Man Rush. Hope you're having a great day, great week wherever you may be across our country, the grand old USA Olympic gold medal champions, men's and women's teams 2026. Great day to be an American. I'm, of course, Will Highland, joined with Kyle Diezel. As always, Diezel, your boy Jack Hughes in overtime, 3-on-3 game winner goal from just outside the face-off circle on the left side. What did you see on that play? And I guess give us a weather report.
Yeah, to start the weather report, it's a calm before the storm here. We've got a big northeastern coming through, so sun's out, no real wind, getting ready for this big storm. Talking about a storm of the USA here taking
That's
over
right.
Canada. Jack Hughes with this goal here. I was afraid on a previous play going down with the Canadians, McDavid. I thought he was outmatched. I was like, all right, this is where they're going to score. This is a mismatch on us. We should have never put him out there. Um, and then he used his whole body to cast him away out of the net there from getting a good shot. And then being able to turn the puck over from the Canes having basically a 2-on-2 to a USA 3-on-1. Talking about odd man rush there.
That's right.
And to be able to be put in that spot, I think the Hughes brothers have ignited something new in the American Hockey Association world for us. I think this is great for both the men and the women. Winning together in this Olympics has now brought up a new spirit and new hope to these younger kids to go out and play hockey. This is what I love to see, and I'm hoping this will continue. Was Team USA the best team out there? I don't think we were. If you look,
Ask Nathan McKinnon. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
but I want to hear your thoughts. How were you feeling throughout this entire game?
All right, so yeah, let's back up here. Great question. Yeah, we're getting ready for a storm, and the calm before the storm felt like yesterday too, because all day yesterday I was amped up, excited for this game. There's so many things to talk about. How to answer your question, how I was feeling during the game. So, in the lead up to the game, there's all the talk. They're interviewing Wayne Gretzky. They're interviewing Michael Ruzioni. I have a 4-month-old baby. All right, so I am up early. I'm jacked, and I am uh watching every passing moment. They're showing montage of this, and they're talking about Miracle on Ice, and they're talking about 2010. And I have said for my entire career covering sports that the 2010 gold medal game was the best hockey game in my lifetime. I'm not fully ready to say that today was better. I think sometimes you make historical judgments in retrospect, not the day that they happen. But that said, throughout the game, I knew from puck drop when we had a really good first shift, and then when Canada answered, I'm gonna say we because I can say we. We are. This is the Olympics. It's USA. Uh, and then Canada had a really good shift. I'm like, this is gonna either go down to the final minutes or it's gonna go down to overtime. And I'll save the big picture thoughts for the end of the pod. But as a Mainer, we usually don't wear other Hockey East schools on our caps, but I have to literally take a cap off to UMass Lowell alum Connor Hellebuck. Kyle, since you and I started this program in July of 2023, we've spent a lot of time talking about the United States goaltending situation when it comes to best on best tournaments. And one thing that I learned today is that any criticism of Connor Hellebuck that we ever had, I'm willing to put that aside going forward. We were wondering, should it be Ottinger's net? Should it be Swayman's net? What about Dustin Wolf? What about Joey Decord? I think at the end of the day, Mike Sullivan trusted his guys up and down the lineup, and he made the right decision having Connor Hellebuck be the number one goaltender, reigning Vezina Trophy winner and Hart Trophy winner, because he was phenomenal today. How many breakaways did he stop? Three, four?
I think about 3 or 4 to multiple stud athletes they have there in Canada. So for him to be able to stop those odd man rushes was phenomenal. He played out of his mind. And we, like you said, we criticized him for all these years since we started the pod about him being up in Winnipeg. And he proved us and others wrong about his play style. And today, with that behind the puck's already past I forget who shot it, and to save it with just a stick, that could have been it. That could have been the game right there. We would never got to overtime. But
Yeah,
for
was that Celebrini or
I think it was I think it was Celebrini on
I
that.
think it was I think it was no, it was there's the picture, wasn't it Devin Taves?
It might have been Devin Tate. I think you're
Yeah, I
right.
think it was Devin Taves. Celebrini did have a breakaway later. I think it was early in the third period or late in the second period. Honestly, because there's no commercials and no, we'll talk about this too. No, basically no commercials, and the intermission report is really quick. It felt like one big game, so I can't even tell you second period, third period, whatever. But yeah, Celebrini had that breakaway. Connor Helblich stopped that. Obviously, Connor McDavid
Yeah,
had a couple. I think, and then Nathan McKinnon had a wide open net at one point. Um, but the other thing I want to talk about, and it leads us back to the Hughes goal, is I think the USA defensemen were as advertised. Uh, Slavin was incredible again. We knew a year ago at the Four Nations he was one of their best players. And then McAvoy jumped in front of the net and stopped a puck with his chest.
mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, Zach Werenski set up the Hughes goal in overtime with that great pass and that move at the blue line that he made. Um, what did you make of the defensemen for the United States today, and how they played? Because they all, let's also not forget they had that 5-on-3 they had to kill in the second period.
Yeah, I mean their defense played amazing. I think as we talked about before, we have probably the best 1 through 6 defenseman core overall. I do think that towards the third, as they were talking about intermission there, we were playing a lot on our heels, and that's what concerned me. We weren't bringing the puck up like our defenders normally do, and I think that almost came back to bite us in the butt. But as I mentioned, the one weakness of Team Canada was their defenseman. They have a 1-2 punch. Outside of that, they really don't have anyone who's scary. Our defense being with, I think it also showed us this year compared to the Four Nations that not having Quinn played a huge factor in a lot of things we did defensively and offensively. So being to have him back there, I think, is a big difference maker. I think he logged the most ice time for Team USA, I
I think
believe,
he
today.
did. Yeah, throughout the whole tournament. Yeah,
So
he was incredible. I mean, and that's the thing. So we talked about the Four Nations face-off, and look, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that yes, Team Canada was playing without Sidney Crosby, their three-time Cup winner and two-time Olympic gold medalist. Huge loss. But if you think about a year ago in Boston for that championship game, um, I think about how well, there was no Quinn Hughes. He didn't participate. Um, we also didn't have Charlie McAvoy in that game. He was hurt. Both of those guys, they played a lot of minutes together, and they played a lot of minutes this morning. And then similarly, Kyle, Jack Hughes last year did not look great in the Four Nations face-off tournament. He didn't look great. And then obviously we talked about Hellebuck in the big game last year. And all of those things were different, right? The other thing we talked a lot about, JT Miller. We were both critical of JT Miller being on this team. Well, JT Miller in the Sweden game had a couple big shot blocks late that helped them. So I think you can look at it either way. Like United States wins the game. We're talking about all these great decisions that were made. Um, they still did have a lot of scoring, right? They won two out of their last three elimination games by a 2-1 margin, right? So they didn't have a lot of scoring. But I thought they were balanced. And look, we were another guy we were critical of. I'll try to keep my camera on. Austin Matthews.
mm-hmm.
Austin Matthews played really well 200-foot game today. He didn't have the offensive um, numbers, really. He did have a couple points in the middle of the tournament, but he played a 200-foot game and didn't have any costly turnovers. So I don't know what you think about, Matthews and some of the other guys who might have let us down a year ago that came up big today.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall everyone on the team played out of their comfort zone. I think everyone played a great 200-foot game, and I don't think we saw that in Four Nations. I think we saw a team of USA being a little more beat up overall, and now most of those players after they played the Four Nations had experience. A lot of those players that we talked about never stood on and put a Team USA jersey on, period. So to them to now to the Olympics and put it on, okay, we have a feeling for it. We've got some pressure here to compete, and we can compete with Canada, which they did. The only thing, like you mentioned, is we are well balanced. We have top forwards, top defensemen, top goaltenders versus Canada. However, Canada did prove that they had the better firepower. A couple missed opportunities. This game could have gone totally different direction. And my only concern is in the future here, is this going to be enough to knock off those Canadians in the future after this kind of loss? After that firepower of what, 41 shots, 42
Yeah,
shots?
it was in the mid 40s, and Canada consistent. I mean, they had as many shots against the United States today as they had against France, and obviously France is a
Correct.
much worse team than the USA, obviously. Um, so yeah, I mean that was they they as a forward group, Canada did whatever they wanted to do in the second period and early in the third period. I'd say the later half of the game in general, the
Mm-hmm.
Canadians did whatever they wanted to do offensively. It was, and you kept hearing Eddie Olczyk and Kenny Albert talk about it, and Brian Boucher as well. They're like, hey, United States has to make a play. Somebody's got to make a play. Somebody's got to do something. And ultimately, my thesis, Kyle, is that I think the play of Hellebuck lifted the rest of the team in that third period.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I mean, Hughes gets his teeth knocked out, literally, Jack does. And then, they have that 4 minute double minor where they don't really have a lot of pressure, but the one thing they were able to do is slow down Canada.
Yeah.
And Canada was more interested in killing all. See, this is where I think the game flipped. I think Canada had all the momentum, even during that power play. And people might say that the second period penalty kill was bigger. I think what happened late in the third was obviously more significant because Canada had a ton of momentum and they talked about it. Rather than go up on the 4-on-4 or on the delayed penalty, they let as much time go off the clock. I would have seized the opportunity there if I was Canada. It looked like they were playing to then play for whistle and get the man advantage as long as possible, which I guess you could do, but it sort of slowed them down. They were more interested in slowing the game down, and Canada did not want should not have wanted to slow the game down at that point. They had all the momentum. So I never played, I never coached a sport, but as an observer for decades now, that's not what you do when you have momentum. I don't know. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I get they're trying to do, but just to have more time on their own power play to be up. But you've got to ride the wave. You can't just
Yeah.
sit back. Like you have momentum. USA had it. Then Jack takes the penalty, and then goes 4-on-4. Then you go up with a 5-on-4. So they had full momentum of that game. I think going into that third. But also, what killed them was you talked about that 5-on-3. They should have scored, but they didn't.
Yeah,
They didn't have
at
many
least
opportunities
once.
either on that 5-on-3. We did a phenomenal kill on that. My concern was giving up a shorty because I think Canada was leading in the series here for shorthanded goals. So that was my only fear when we were on the power play of giving up a nice shorthanded goal because we have a history of it. Giving up a nice easy one on one.
Yeah, with all
Well,
the skill they roll out there. Yeah.
going off of that, who do you think now, since the NHL season will resume here, I believe on Wednesday, who is going to take this momentum from either Canada or US and bring this energy to their team?
Well, I think the easy answer, and you're gonna like this answer, is I think the easiest answer is Jack Hughes. I mean, obviously you score the game winner and you are the guy on your team. Right? There's some other players on the Devils. Obviously, Nico and Timo are good and whatnot. And Markstrom didn't have a great ending to his run here with Sweden. But um, if Winnipeg was more in the playoff picture, I would say maybe Winnipeg, but because Connor Hellebuyck has that arrow in his quiver now, but probably Jack Hughes, probably the Devils, because look, Jack's a guy he played wing, right? He played wing. Obviously, Matthews and Eichel and Larkin and Trocheck are better centers, I think, in this kind of tournament than Hughes is. So he was playing on the wing, um, and he watched his brother score the game winner against Sweden. Um, but I think for Jack, I mean, you saw his interview after with Catherine Tappan. I mean, that was as raw and as real of a hockey interview as you're ever going to get. Usually, these guys are really mild-mannered in their interviews and polite. That was about as emotional and in a calm sense as I've ever seen a hockey player. So yeah, for me, it's Jack. It's Jack Hughes. He certainly had the ending of the tournament, the ending of all endings. What do you think? I mean, there's a lot of guys. I think Dylan Larkin is also on a team that's trying to get in, and he scored a lot of big goals in this tournament. Um, but for me, it'd be the guy that's on your jersey right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a different approach. I'll take his brother and Matt Boldy taking all this momentum
That's
to
right.
take wild. I think they're gonna be a wild horse going into this to the playoffs here for the Wild. But I do also think for overall looking at Canada, I do think this does bring some more energy toward Cale McCarr, toward Nathan McKinnon. I think they're not going to go down easy. I think they're going to bring this energy and fuel from losing today to the USA. Okay, let's go win the Stanley Cup next. The other
Yeah.
thing, look at Connor McDavid. Okay, now he's lost 3 times to Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
He hasn't gotten over that hurdle. That right now, that is his current kryptonite is Matthew Tkachuk.
And don't
And
forget Jack Eichel, who was
mm,
picked one pick after him in that famous 2015 draft, is in his division. Um, but yeah, the Florida connection with the past two Cup finals. Yeah, I think you saw McDavid out there at the end when they were giving out. He was at last in line, number 97. Um, and he looked like his puppy died. Like he or worse. I mean, he looked as bad as he did the last two Junes at the end of the Cup final. So, yeah, like obviously he has a lot of pressure on him being the best player in the sport, being on a Canadian team, being Canadian, etc. Um, I thought he had a great I mean he had a great tournament, right? He's like an insanely great tournament statistically for McDavid. And he wore the C today and on Friday for Canada. Yeah, it's gonna add a lot of pressure to these guys. Like I think a lot of these guys like this Canadian group, um, obviously Drew Doughty was a part of the team. Drew
yep,
Doughty was the only one to have an Olympic medal who was on the ice today. Um, they're gonna be hungry. Okay, like I don't want to spend too much time about on the future, but we certainly can if you want. They're gonna be hungry, and this is going to ignite a rivalry. And they said it during the pregame. In order for it to be a rivalry, the other team has to win once in a while in
mm-hmm.
a crucial game. And um that's what it was for the United States today. Like they've ignited this rivalry and this whole generation of players. A lot of them, this was their first Olympics. The only guy on the ice today who had even skated in an Olympics before was Drew Doughty.
Yep.
Um, and going forward in 2030, gosh, and beyond, it's going to be something to keep an eye on. How do these guys respond? What does this rivalry look like? Do we get a Four Nations t style NHL sanctioned tournament in 2028? What does it all look like? Um, I don't know. That's a big question. I want your opinion on the McKinnon comments because I don't know if you had a chance to read those. But after the game, he said something like, "Take a look at the game today and tell me who the better team was." Well.
I mean,
I'd take a look at the scoreboard first, is what I'd do. Uh, but what do you make of that if you're hearing this for the first time?
I mean,
He's insinuating they were the better team.
I think we're all at the same point that they were the better team. On paper,
Yeah,
they were the better team. Not overall, but based on their forwards alone, how much firepower they had, that puts them way ahead. But what's the old saying? When talent isn't there and hard work is there, hard work's going to win 100% of the time. And I think that just proved the way today that the hard work that Team USA put in, they weren't as, yes, they were very talented. They're not as talented as no one on Team USA, I will say, 1 through 3 forwards. is as good as Canadians 1 through 3.
When they brought out the overtime, I told my wife, I told her, I said, those are the three best players in the league.
Correct.
Like they brought out McKinnon, McCarr, and McDavid. I was like, those are like the three best players in the league. Like because you obviously have to have a defenseman. I mean, obviously you can
Yeah.
say that like maybe, maybe Connor Bedard or Macklin Celebrini or somebody else is having a better year and is literally the third best. But like if you're putting a defenseman out there, I'm like, those are the three best players in the league. And they brought him up for a 3-on-3 overtime. But credit, and that's a great point. Credit to Mike Sullivan though.
Mm-hmm.
He was willing to put guys out there to win faceoffs, get them off the ice. I mean, they coached that like an NHL style 3-on-3. Um, and the Canadian fans are going to say, suddenly, they won two overtime games. Um, but or actually Finland they scored in the last minute, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so never mind. But they weren't crying about overtime when they beat Czechia, but 3-on-3, let's talk about it since you brought it up. McKinnon might be right. They might have been the better team if shots on goal won you games,
Correct.
and if time of possession or in the offensive zone won you games. But Connor Hellebuck stood tall in overtime. He stood tall in the 60 minutes, and so 3-on-3 comes around, and you get Werenski, Hughes, and I don't know who the third player was on the ice for USA at the time of the goal, but like it's not like they had Matthews, Kachuk, and Kachuk out there, or the other Hughes, Kachuk, and Eichel out there. I mean, they were playing matchups, and like you said a couple minutes ago, could have gone poorly for Hughes
Yep.
um, against McDavid. So, what do you think about the 3-on-3 overtime in a vacuum, and then also how it played out?
Yeah, I mean the 3 on 3 I think is I love it because it's a smaller atmosphere and it really allows you to kind of do whatever you want with the puck. It allows more opportunities, much more open ice. And it's all about, I think for those 3 on 3, it's really strategy, as you talked about, having to have a guy come in just to the face off, come right off. Because I think Chorchak came in for most of those face off and just went right off the ice. Like his goal was, you got try to win the face off, you get it, great, come right off. Like everyone understood their role and they did their job. And for you, Team USA is being outshot almost 2-1. Uh, they waited for their opportunities. So when they're just waiting for Canada to make a mistake, and when Canada made that mistake, guess who capitalized?
Jack
Jack.
Hughes. Ha! Yeah, I know, G.
That's kind of what
Yeah,
Team had to do today. How they were going to beat Canada was Hellbuck had to play out of his mind. Use
check.
these that present right in front of you because man to man, they are just going to be firing the puck away. You just got to do the best you can. If they give up something easy like they did in overtime, take advantage of it because you're not going to get many of those. You got to capitalize them.
Yeah. And look, like I think a lot was made heading into the tournament about like when we talked about it with Patrick last week and we talked about it leading up to it. The experience of USA wasn't
Mm-hmm.
as big in terms of Stanley Cup appearances, playoff appearances, etc. But you look at that final play, Werenski hasn't played a lot of playoff games, if any, in a long time. Um, Jack Hughes hasn't played a lot of playoff games, but when that play unfolded, Hughes knew exactly where he needed to go. And in 3-on-3, like you said, there's a lot more ice. And some people call it a skills competition. Some people don't like it. Would I have preferred 4-on-4 for 20 minutes? Probably. Um, but at the end of the day, like they were prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They were prepared to know Mike Sullivan's we're gonna do quick changes. We're just gonna quick change. And Kenny Albert had said and Eddie Olczyk had said going into the overtime that some of these guys they might not get on the ice.
Yep. Shorter
But
bench.
shorter bench. But um Trocheck, a lot of people were wondering why he was on this team, right? Oh, he's on the team because he plays for the New York Rangers. No, he's on the team because he wins faceoffs. He's on the team because he's good in his own end.
Sure.
And that's why, like, again, team selection, I go back to it over and over and over. They knew what this tournament was gonna be. This tournament was gonna be 3-on-3 overtime. Okay. 5-on-5, Canada probably wins in overtime. I'm being honest. Like they probably do because but 3-on-3 open ice, like you said, they waited for Canada to make a mistake, and Canada turned the puck over. Canada didn't capitalize on their own chances. They were the team that had the most grade A chances all game long, the team that had the most talent on the ice. Um, but hockey's a team sport. It's not. This is an all-star game, and I go back to it. Mike Sullivan team selection. A lot of people criticized him, but I think he pushed all the right buttons today.
I agree with that. He pushed all the right buttons. I mean, he brought guys in that he thought we had a chance with, and this is a team that he had the pick to. He knew who he was going to face in the finals. It was going to be Canada, no matter what. I need a team that's going to do this, a team that's going to get me there. The question is, who's going to be my goaltender? And we talked about it, and Hellebuck stepped up. And I mean, we crapped on some of these players before, as we talked about on this pod about uh, Miller, talked about Torchek, Jack Hughes comparing from Four Nations. Should he be on this team? Should he not be on this team? And they proved us wrong. This
Yeah.
team was together, and everyone understood their role. And I think that was the huge difference. We had guys who did their job. You knew your role and what you're going to provide for the team, and you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, look, I think that a lot of people were questioning Bill Guerin as well, the GM of Team USA, for all these choices and not bringing in Jason Robertson or Cole Caulfield. Those guys are really good players. Cole Caulfield, Jack Hughes, very similar players. Um, but Hughes had the big win, the big goal today to win the game, and maybe that would have been Cole Caulfield. Maybe we'll find out when there's another best on best tournament. But I think, and look, Team Canada, they did a really good job. You cannot replace Sidney Crosby, but they Nick Suzuki played well when he had the opportunity. I thought Marchand had a good game today. Marchand was kind of invisible
Yep.
for a lot of the Canada tournament. He didn't play a lot. Um, but today I thought he played really well. He had a couple big chances. I thought the bottom of Canada's roster, Sam Bennett, took that penalty. Um, and I thought I was like, I really want to score on this 4 minute power play we have. But like I said, it turned out to be the turning point of the game. Um, so I guess let's talk about the future. Um, Going forward, what do you want to see for international competition? Now that we've have this Olympic tournament behind us, do you want to see a expanded NHL sanctioned kind of tournament um, that happens in the middle of the season? Do you want to see one that happens before the season? What's your now that we've had a little taste of it the last couple of years, what do you want to see going forward?
That's tough. I mean, I think it'd be nice to do something like this like every other year, not every year. I do
Right.
think if we do the Four Nations again, like in 2028, I think that'd be perfect. It really sets up for the Olympics. It's a good prelogue to it. So I'd love to see it continue to grow. Even with that expansion for just not even a national, just think about the NHL want to also expand and add two more teams. So I think it's important that we're starting to see more players wanting to come play, and we're starting to see these other teams be competitive. Look at Sweden, look at Finland. It's not just a Canada, it's not just a USA. It's you're starting to see these other nations also pick it up. And I think if we're able to keep doing this every other year, you're going to see the growth of hockey around the world.
I agree. I agree. This is a great tournament. And look, the United States they played 5 games at 9 o'clock local time, PM, right? They played all 5 of their games before today in the latest possible time slot. Not a lot gets talked about that because, for us, we don't understand how late they were playing. They were playing into midnight, after midnight, getting
Mm-hmm.
home, getting back to the hotel, Olympic Village, wherever. Um, that that was big. Um, and so like I know that's kind of a separate point, but comparing the Olympic tournament that we're going to see in France, assuming NHL players go, it's going to be a lot like this one in that There's going to be a lot of travel. There's going to be questions about, I know the women's team, and we'll talk about them at the very end. Um, the women's tournament had some illness problems.
Mhm.
Um, but the the Olympic tournament it's going to be different. It's going to be special. What the NHL needs to do if they're interested in continuing to capitalize on momentum, because historically, since the lockout, they have
Mhm.
been bad at marketing. Um, they need what I would do if I was Gary Bettman and Bill Daly is I would set up a tournament, get buy-in from the IIHF, um, and have in 2028, in 2 years, I would have a tournament that takes place in um, Buffalo and Toronto, or Detroit and Toronto, either one. Um, just like we had Boston, Montreal. I'd have either New York, Toronto, Detroit, Toronto, Buffalo, Toronto, something like that. And then I'd have the top eight. So I'd have anybody if so the world if you want to use next year's World Championships as a qualifier,
Mhm.
or if you want to use this Olympics as a qualifier, it's kind of already happened. So
Mhm.
whatever. Um, you'd have your best eight countries play one another. You do a two division round robin, and the top two from each division play, three total games to decide the winner.
Mhm.
So that's the same amount of games as this tournament, but it would happen in North America in NHL, um, in NHL circles. And then what would happen is in 2030, when they do the Olympics, you'd go to France, so then it would be in Europe. And then in 2032, I'd go back to Europe, because in 2034 the Olympics would be in Salt Lake. So you try and be as fair as you can
Yeah.
with the location of the tournament. And the NHL has decent relationships with the other leagues, the other pro leagues in Europe.
Mhm.
So you could have it in Stockholm or in Helsinki, and I think they would be okay with the quality of ice
Yeah.
and whatnot. Um, but you'd need buy-in from the IIHF if you were going to have this be a big tournament. I think one of the critiques of the Four Nations was that it wasn't big enough, but they can only put NHL players in that spot.
Correct.
So, if you wanted to fill eight countries, that's what I would do. I wouldn't have it be more than eight, if you were going to do a World Cup. And I would not do it as they did in 2016 before the season, because I don't think anybody cares. I think in August, it's really hard to sell hockey in August and September.
Yeah. It's hard because with at the NFL, you're competing with baseball versus you're doing in February. There's MLB's just going through spring training. You have football's already over, and there's only the NBA and hockey, really. Maybe the start of golf here and there, but everyone.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Daytona 500, you have a start of golf. I mean, there's some things that happen after the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
but we saw last year, and again, yeah, part of it had to do with the rhetoric about the USA and Canada last year. But like that Four Nations tournament delivered to a non-hockey audience in North America, like in really United States, because Canada is a hockey audience, they'll watch it no matter what. But that resonated. So this time of year works. It works. And the NHL, I think, would be okay pausing their season for 2 weeks if these guys are staying on the continent,
Yes.
or if they get money out of this uh, World Cup that they should create. I think you could easily have it. And look, if Russia ever gets allowed back, you want Russia a part of it for sure. Um, so that's what I think. They should do. They have to capitalize on it. The players want it. There was only, I guess, two big injuries. There was Kevin Fiala,
Mm-hmm.
and Sidney Crosby. Everybody else, there was no big injury.
No, no big injury. I think it was you'd have to change the rules a little bit to potentially how they do here, because as you saw in the Four Nations, there were a lot more major injuries that happened. So we're able to potentially change that style just to be adaptive to like the European play. So I think that's the only difference that they would make in the rule changes for kind of that four nations going forward. If you're going to invite other nations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I think what may have caused it, the challenge with the four nations, because you did see a lot more injuries, um, and with less teams, um, is the proximity. Like they basically finished that up in about a week rather than 2 weeks. So you stretched it out. And look, they were playing a lot of hockey, but they also didn't start until what, the 13th?
Yeah.
In the Olympics, I think the last NHL game was on Sunday the 8th, or Monday the 9th. If I think maybe it was even Saturday, it was either before the day before the Super Bowl or the day after the Super Bowl. It was the last, and then they basically didn't play for 4 days, and then they played, and then they had breaks in between. There's You rarely played back to backs unless you were in the quarterfinal, um, in the playing round. So yeah, I think they have to do something like this again. It went too well. You have to do it while you have all these stars in their prime, because the really exciting thing for both USA and Canada is they have some really good young players. Some of them didn't even play. Like Bedard didn't even play.
No.
Bedard, and then on the USA side, obviously we brought up Caulfield and Robertson. But you have prospects like um, like James Higgins, who's a Bruins
Mhm.
prospect. Um, Canadians have Gavin McKenna, maybe we'll see, and then they have what's his name, who was drafted over number one overall by the Islanders last year. I forget his name, the defenseman there.
Schaefer.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, these guys, none of these guys that even played,
No.
obviously. So the future's bright. Do you have any other final thoughts on like the game itself, like backtracking a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, besides sitting there, stressed out from just the
Yeah,
prep,
yeah, you asked me, how was it for you?
it was stressful. I mean, just watching Canada just dramatically have possession in the entire basically second and third period. It was like there's like you're begging for them to score a goal. It's what it was saying. Like
Yeah.
when's it like they were knocking on the door multiple times, and we just couldn't do anything offensively, and that's what scared me. It's like we're just chilling in our zone. I mean, this is kind of like my opinion watching the Devils of in our zone the entire time. We got zero offense. So that
Yep.
was where it was at for me. And like I talked about, when they had put Jack out there as even as a Devils fan and a fan of Jack Hughes, I'm like, oh shit, Connor McDavid's out there, dude's gonna get freaking ran over, and he did. I mean, he used his whole body to escort him around the net, which he had to do. There's no other way. He's not as big as strong as Connor McDavid, but he has his own pros of speed versus Connor McDavid. He's a little more quicker. But overall, I think I'm happy. I'm happy. We have proved to Canada, as they said in a commercial, we wanted Canadian tears. We got Canadian tears. Um, so I think for going forward for us, we'll just keep this momentum riding high. I going into the NHL now starting up. I think Scott Fitzgerald, for example, now seeing what Jack has done to carry his momentum, is going to be making some big moves. This is my bold take.
That is a bold take. Um, I like that. Yeah, let's close out the show in a second talking about the rest of the NHL season and what could happen, because we haven't talked about that in a while. Because we've been focusing so much on the Olympics and the Super Bowl, which we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to talk about the Super Bowl. Okay. Um, but actually, that kind of leads me to my final thought on the Olympic tournament. Um, Being a Boston sports fan, witnessing Super Bowl wins, World Series wins, a Stanley Cup win, NBA Finals, etc. Um, the the thing I the thing I look back at the most, one of the things I look back at the most that I'm proud of is when I can root for my country. And that is like in the World Baseball Classic, in the Olympics, in obviously in the Four Nations Face-Off, which we talked about, in the FIFA World Cup that's coming up. That's those are some really great memories in sports. And today felt like winning the World Series as a fan or winning the Super Bowl as a fan. I know, you're a Rams fan, they won the Super Bowl a few years ago. You're a Devil fan, they won the Stanley Cup when you were a kid. Like, I don't know if you agree, but it felt like that. And if you're a kid our age who grew up with the movie Miracle, grew up 2010 Olympics, 2014 Olympics, came up short. Obviously, the Four Nations last year we talked about. What today was a was vindication for American hockey fans who routinely are cast aside by the American sports media,
Mhm.
by the Canadian sports media for sure. They think we don't know what we're talking about. Um, routinely cast aside, don't have a lot of friends who we can talk about hockey with. That's why we started this program because we wanted to provide a young American perspective on the sport. It was vindication for that. It was, look, we belong. We belong. 1980 was 50 years ago. Like that movie is a great movie, but to us it's a movie. We didn't live it. And so today, in the last week or so, like I've met Mike Ruzioni, I've read his book. I'm not taking anything away from him. That was incredible, but I was not alive. To me, it's like a mythology.
Mhm.
This was our thing. Like obviously it wasn't David versus Goliath. It doesn't have the big, Cold War ramifications or any of that. But it was a it was you're rooting for your country to do something they haven't done in your lifetime. It feels like when your favorite team wins a championship. That's kind of
Correct.
my thought. And it's vindicating for us because we you sit around and ESPN barely covers the NHL, even though they have the rights to the games. And it's
Mhm.
hard to find people that are watching hockey. You go to a bar, you go to Applebee's. Do they have hockey on? No. You know what I mean? So living here is hard sometimes if you're a hockey fan. So it felt like vindication for that. And to your point that you made earlier, I hope it continues to grow the sport. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I know that was,
Yeah, I mean it's like the commercial they had on there where you saw like Spike Lee and what's his name? I can't remember the name from the Pacers. You also had a Lakers fan, a Celtics fan. Like you had people of rival teams here in the states, but when it came to representing your country, they put all that hatred aside and join arms and say, "Hey, you know what? It is we being everyone here because you know what? They're representing us as the people." I mean, it's similar to you could say as those going off to war. Like they're going out to protect us. They're going out there to represent us, the people. Like, hey, this is the reason why we're up here because we're the best of the best. We were picked to go represent the whole nation, and
yeah,
we can join hands together because you don't have. Like you talk about, you don't have to know anything about hockey. You don't have to know anything about the sport, but the atmosphere for sports in general under the same nation has a much bigger impact versus an individual of the NHL versus the MLB. It's just everyone comes together no matter what. And I think that's a huge thing that I love about the Olympics. It doesn't matter what you like for sports or anything, they're going to come watch it
yeah,
and cheer that.
yeah. It's great, and it's actually before we talk about the NHL to close the show. I think what the women did, the women's
Mm-hmm.
team was incredible. They outscored people 33-2, something insane
Yep.
like that. Um, Hillary Knight, obviously, who's five-time Olympian, I believe, gets that final goal
Goals
for
for, I believe it's a female athlete in general.
what was that?
I think she has the all time points and goals. I don't know if it's just USA or for all of Olympics for hockey on the women's side.
She may. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I know Megan Duggan played for a long time. I know Angela Ruggiero played for a long time. There's been some really strong players over the years. But she gets the tying goal, and then Megan Keller in overtime puts a
Mm-hmm.
move kind of like what Matt Boldy did in the first period today. Um, and gets the golden goal on the women's side. So, and they have an even deeper rivalry with Canada that lasts years since 2014. I remember watching that game. That's largely considered the best women's game ever.
Mm-hmm.
United States had a 2-1 lead, 2-0 lead, and then a 2-1 lead, missed an empty netter by about 5 inches. The puck stopped right in the crease, and then um, Canada ends up tying it, and then Canada ends up winning in overtime. Marie-Philippe Poulin scores for them, and so like they have an even deeper rivalry. So for that to happen at the same time as the men's, it's special. It reminds me of when, in March Madness, like when UConn men and women won, or when you see a team dominate in the Olympics on both sides of the competition, whether it be gymnastics or track and field or whatever, and they win the same event in both men's and women's competition. It reminded me of that, and it's really special because it goes back to what you said. The Olympics is for everybody, right? Mike Tirico had a great sign off. I encourage you to go watch it. He's one of the best in the business. He was telling you that the dreams are born by witnessing them happen, and you become. It gives you something to strive for. And Mike Eruzione talked about it all the time. Um, if you read his book, The Making of a Miracle, he talks
Mm-hmm.
about the he will like always be remembered for like one goal on one day in Lake Placid, New York. But that team over the course of that week,
Mm-hmm.
leading up to the Miracle on Ice, gave the country something to root for in a time when they didn't have a lot to root for. Hostages had just been taken in Iran. The economy was in the tubes. It was an election year. And that I think that's a good lesson. That's a good lesson for sports fans. It's still, as Tarico said, one of the last things that brings people together. So it's exciting. Certainly is. Okay. Kyle, NHL.
Yep.
Bruins in a playoff spot. I honestly haven't looked at the standings in like 2 weeks.
I
Bru-
haven't looked at the current standings in a while here either, so I have to take a
I'm gonna
quick
pull them up. Bruins, I know we're in a playoff spot. Devils were either in one or just outside.
let's see.
So Bruins in a playoff spot. Devils are about 11 points out, so they are worse off than I thought.
Yes.
But but the good news is there's the trade deadline, and you think they're going to make a push. There's a lot of teams in between them and the Bruins who hold the final spot right now. What does New Jersey have to do in the second half?
they've got they've got to score and not just get the puck in their zone. They can't look like Team USA versus Canada.
Well,
Being,
unless Jack Hughes is scoring a game-winning goal all the time, then they'd be okay.
but I'm referring to as just having the
I
puck
know
come
what you mean.
in the zone, making costly turnovers, and just you outshoot your opponents like Canada, but you lose because you can't score the puck. You'll lose games like 2-0, and you just can't do that. I don't know what happened. I mean, you got it. Jack was hurt for a little bit, but Jesper Bratt having a down year. Timo Meier just he's hot and cold. He's not streaky like he was last year when he was just Mister March Madness. So that's what they need to fix, and they do need to make cap space. They've got. I mean, yes, they got rid of Plot. They still need to get rid of Dougie Hamilton. I mean, he's a great.
I'd take Dougie Hamilton. I'll give you a fourth round pick in cash for Dougie Hamilton.
And then I mean, I also think now looking at how he's playing, I know I get Luke Hughes is on IR, so he's not coming back, I don't believe, currently anytime soon.
Yeah, which is too
Uh,
bad. Did he go to Milan to watch his brothers?
I didn't see him there. He might
Yeah,
have. I saw mom and dad had gone. But I do think that they signed the wrong guy now, looking at play style this year. I think Simone Nemeth should have been the guy paid.
yeah.
I think he right now has the better skill set as a defenseman. So I think they should have kept or signed him to a long term deal, but that's a discussion for a different time. And Markstrom just is Markstrom. He's just not playing great because our defense isn't playing well as a team. So maybe this Jack Hughes can bring this momentum and what he learned from
Possibly, like I said, he's the guy.
to bring it back to Jersey. And Scott was there; it was also part of Team USA, putting that team together. So Scott's got to make some moves here. He's going to have to find another guy who can play another 200-foot game.
Yeah.
That like Timo Meyer can't do it all. I think Brat might be traded. If I look at it, he's having a down year. It might be time to switch it up. I know he's a speedy guy on a big contract, but he's having a down year.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately for you guys, like I don't see New Jersey making the playoffs. I think
We're, we're
they need too many things to go right for them. What they should be worried about is sort of building for next year because you have, as much as I say Jack Hughes has momentum coming out of the Olympics, there's still a lot for them to do between now and the end of the year. I think New Jersey should be looking to build in the offseason because look, one of the things that comes with big moments is you know, leave it to a New Jersey Devil player to have a big Olympic moment, Zach Parise, etc. I would argue that Zach Parise being a focal point of that 2010 Olympic team helped New Jersey with recruiting players so that in 2012 they made it to the Cup final. You think about players want to play with stars. Like even though it's not the NBA, like there's something about in free agency and the NHL is yeah, New Jersey, they got something going on there. Jack Hughes, like who wouldn't want to go play with Jack Hughes? Maybe Quinn Hughes wants to go play with Jack Hughes. Maybe they had so much fun this past couple weeks that maybe next summer he's the guy that wants to go to New Jersey. So I think you should really be focusing on building around Jack Hughes,
Mhm.
building around Nico, and looking for what's ahead of you, and if that includes trading Dougie Hamilton again, if you take half his contract, we'll give you a second round pick. Um,
Going,
because
going
we need help. Bruins need help on D. McAvoy's going to be exhausted. McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm both played a lot of minutes for their countries. Um, I think the Swayman needs to. He was not great against Denmark. He was better in the second and third period. Thankfully, the color of the boards in Boston is not black, um, so we'll be able to see the puck hopefully. But he looked like he had a smile ear to ear when they
Mhm.
put that medal around him. First guy to get the medal, wearing number one. Um, so yeah, like I think for the Bruins, that's what you look for. Is you look for more defensive play, Swayman to continue to play well. They were playing really well heading into the break. They were on a point streak. They actually should have won the outdoor game.
Yeah.
But that was a great game too. So they have something going for them. But I think it's still the men and the boys in the NHL right now. Like you look at that Central Division, and it's like Colorado and Dallas
Hmm.
and Minnesota, and only one team is going to come out of that division to the conference final. And then in the Pacific, you have Edmonton is not going to go anywhere. They're going to make a push.
Hmm.
Vegas is around. We didn't talk about it yet, but Panarin gets dealt to Los Angeles, but then they lose Fiala in this Olympic tournament. Um, so the Kings are right in that playoff mix. Anaheim, Seattle have been a surprise team.
Utah.
Utah, Vegas. Obviously, Vegas, we know with all their stars, a lot of whom played in the Olympics, like Shea Theodore, Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner. Um, a lot of Olympians out there on the ice that were also Vegas Golden Knights today. So the West is men and boys, and then the East is can Buffalo stay hot? Is Pittsburgh going to be able to weather this Crosby injury? There's a lot of is New York Islanders going to stick around? There's a lot of big decisions to be made here.
Correct. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. My wild card team currently still is out in the West. Actually, I do think the Sharks will be the secret wild card to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, they have a lot of runway, and look, Celebrini was one of the best players in the tournament, and they have a lot of young guys on that team that are that are solid. They also have some veterans as well. Um, and we talked about goaltending for the United States. We didn't really talk about Jordan Binnington today. I thought he was really good, but Canada almost didn't make it to this game because Lucas Dostal
Yeah.
had a tremendous game, and the Anaheim Ducks are in the mix, right? Another California team
Mm-hmm.
out there in the mix, just like San Jose, another young California team. So I'm excited to get hockey back. I hope it, like you pointed out earlier, I hope it energizes the rest of the fan base, both diehard and casual, to get invested. And as far as our teams are concerned, we'll see what they do at the trade deadline. Bruins, I think, just add a depth defenseman. Maybe it's Dougie Hamilton. Probably not. Um, and they'll be okay. But it's going to be the thing is we're already at the end of February. The trade deadline is in less than 2 weeks,
Yeah. March.
and a lot of teams have played almost 60 games already. So there's a uh, there's a chance that not a lot happens in the last 20 games because there's not enough time for these teams to get in. But hey, I like hot takes. And the Sharks making the playoffs is certainly a hot take. Okay, I'll give you the last word: Olympics, NHL, hockey. What are you thinking?
Mm,
Any other final thoughts?
I don't think I have any final thoughts. I still think that the Hart Trophy is going to go to Celebrini this year. I do think if he brings the Sharks team to the playoffs, I think he deserves it for that kind of team they have overall. Yes, Nathan McKinnon has the stats and everything else, but he's got a much different team. Um, but that would be my last words on that. I think what's going to happen is these guys are going to carry over from Team USA all this energy to their current team, which is going to fuel this wild card to playoff race, which is going to be fun to watch the next few months here.
It's gonna be so fun. Yeah, it's gonna be so fun to watch. My Bedard pick for Hart Trophy is taking a little bit of a backseat, but um, yeah, it's still. I think it's gonna be somebody from the West, um, whether it's McDavid or McKinnon or Celebrini or whomever. So I agree with you. I agree with your last word there. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Odd Man Rush. If you are interested in merch, we've got merch out, guys. We've been waiting a long time. You can go to sportland.square.site. That's sportland.square.site. Use promo code RUSH, as in Odd Man Rush, not the band from Canada, to get 20% off your first order. We also have USA Olympic champion gear available as well, including your 11-ounce Canadian Tears mug to enjoy with your morning beverage. But until then, Kyle, until next time, appreciate everybody tuning in. Kyle, thank you for jumping on this afternoon. USA gold medal winners for 2026 in Milan. We'll be back in a little bit, probably to talk trade deadline coming up, but have a great rest of your week. I'm Will Highland, and that's Kyle Diezel. Thanks for listening to Odd Man Rush.